To make your text content as legible and approachable as possible, it's important to lay it out properly. That means applying proper text formatting to your content. To make this as easy as possible, WordPress comes with a ton of tools built in for precisely this purpose. In fact, working with text in WordPress is not all that dissimilar from working with text in a word processing application. Just remember that all text formatting should be done within WordPress. Here I have the post I created earlier, and you should follow along with this. So if you don't already have a post to work with, I urge you to create a post right now so that you can use the same tools that I'm using. As you can see in my edit window, I have a set of tools at the top of the editor here. Normally you should see 2 rows of tools. If you only see 1 row like this, try clicking on the button at the far right-hand side that says Show Hide Kitchen Sink. This will open both rows of buttons. Now let's look at what styling options you have within these tools. Of course, you have the standard ones. If I highlight a word here, you can see you have bold, italicized, strike through, and also underline. These are the standard formatting tools you'll be using a lot, and applying them to your text can help you highlight certain types of content or break some content out. Most of these also have the standard shortcuts, so you'll see that bold, italicized, and strike through each have their own shortcuts. And it's important to note that WordPress also has the ability to undo and redo actions. So you'll see here, there's an undo button with the standard shortcut, and also a redo button with the standard shortcut. Exactly what those shortcuts are will be apparent when you hover your mouse over them, and it depends on what kind of platform you're using. In addition to these styling options, you also have the standard unordered list or bullet list and ordered list or numbered list. To apply these, you first need to create a new line and then click on whatever list you want. So I'll create an unordered bullet list, and here I can type in my list items. To create new lines, I keep hitting return and then typing new items. And when I want to break out of my list, I simply hit return twice, and this gives me a clean paragraph line again. The same goes for the ordered or numbered lists. Next to ordered and numbered lists, you have this block quote option. Now this looks like creating a quote, and that's kind of correct, but the block quote is actually a specialized style that you can use in web applications. A block quote breaks content out of the overall flow to emphasize it, and it's usually used to quote either actual quotes or sections that you want to emphasize within your text. So for example, if I want to emphasize this line of text, I can copy it out, add it to a new line, just leave my cursor on this line and click on the block quote link. This will change the styling of the text. And if I now save my draft and preview it, you'll see that this part of the text looks quite different. How exactly it will appear depends on the theme you're using. And some themes have added functionality that allows you to shift the block quotes either to the left or to the right and do other fancy things with it. That is dependent on the theme you're using, so you need to read the documentation and instruction for your current theme to find out if that's an option. The next options are alignment. Here you see I have align left, align center, align right, and there's also a button called align full or justify. I highly recommend you never use these buttons, and that's because the theme that you use on your site is what controls how you display the content. And the designer of that theme has already decided what alignment works best for that theme. So if you start applying these alignment rules to your content, you're going against what the designer intended. And there's a high chance that that won't work the way you want. So I recommend staying away from these 4 buttons. Next, you have add link and remove link, and we're going to cover these later in the course. Next, we have the more button, the one you see here, and I'll cover that later in the course when it makes more sense. The button next to it, which has the arrows out, is actually really interesting, and it was introduced a couple of versions ago in WordPress, but people generally don't know it exists. This is the distraction-free writing mode. And if you click on it, you get a truly distraction-free environment to write in. As you can see, all the user interface of WordPress is removed and you're left simply with a plain white page where you can write your content. To get the tools to appear, simply wiggle your mouse and they'll appear at the top, but you only have a subset of tools, the most commonly used ones, that you can apply to your content. Here you can edit your content just like you would anywhere else, and it gives you a nice clean environment to write in. And once you're done writing, you can either save the post or click Exit Full Screen to jump back to the full user interface. The second line of the tools starts with what I consider to be the most important element in this toolkit, and that is this dropdown that allows you to apply different styles to different content. When you write standard content in WordPress or anywhere else on the web, you are creating what's known as paragraphs. And paragraphs are simply paragraphs of text. But to separate your content, you're probably also going to add in some different headings and subheadings. And it's very important that you highlight these headings correctly inside WordPress so that Google and other readers understand that these are subheadings. Inside my content here, I have a couple of subheadings, for instance, this one. So now I want to apply a subheading to this line of text. I'm going to highlight it and use this dropdown to select an appropriate heading. Now, the inclination is to use heading 1, but heading 1 is already taken up by the title of this post. So instead, I'm going to start with heading 2. So I'll select heading 2, and you see the formatting changes for this line. Now, how the formatting changes depends on the theme you're using. So heading 2 doesn't mean that it's going to look like this, bold and lowercase. It might, in some themes, mean thin and uppercase, or it might mean that there's a line under it. That depends on the theme you're using. What's important here is that the markup, the wrapping around the text, is correct, saying heading 2, so that your web browser and search engines understand that this is a subheading. Scrolling down, I can find another heading. Here it is. And I can apply the same heading, heading 2, or I can apply heading 3 or 4 or 5 and make a hierarchy out of my content. So here I'm going to apply heading 2 again, and then scroll down, find the third heading, and apply heading 2. And that's it. We've already covered your underline and your justify options. There's also a color option that, again, I urge you never to use because this, again, overrides the intention of the design. This is more like a feature that people want, so that's why it's there, but I don't recommend using it. But if you really want to, you can try. You have your paste as plain text and paste as word options that we've covered previously. You have a style eraser that allows you to take away formatting from text. So for instance, if you have a line of text that has both bold and italicized and underline on it, you can simply check the text and then click this button to get rid of it all. And next, you have a character map that allows you to insert custom characters. So here, if I want to add a pi symbol, I can simply click on it and then find pi somewhere in here and insert it. So you get the full deck of all the standard mathematical and other symbols that you can add in as well. Just like with any other text editor, you have indentation options here, so you can indent your content and then pull it back to the regular alignment. But again, this relates to the theme you're using. So whether or not this will work depends on the theme you're using. You can experiment with it, but make sure that you preview it first so you're not doing something weird with your site. And if it doesn't work, remember to remove it. And then we have undo and redo, which we already talked about. And finally, help, which gives you help on how to use this editor. Personally, I only use a few of these characters. I use the standards, bold, italicized, and strike through, ordered and unordered lists, the block quote, and this dropdown with options. I don't really use the rest of these features except sometimes undo or redo, and I do occasionally use the distraction-free writing mode. But the rest of these features are there for a purpose. Your method may require to use many or all of these features, and it's important to know them. So take the time to experiment with each of them, see how they apply, and more importantly, Apply them and then preview the page and see what that looks like on the front end of your site so you get a full understanding of what you're doing when you're applying different styles. Once you know the text formatting functions in WordPress, they're not all that different from those found in a word processing application. Formatting your text properly makes it easier to read and more approachable for people visiting your site. It also makes your content easier to find and index for search engines. And like always, nothing is ever final in WordPress, so you can always change things around later.